Hi everyone, I'm Angie, VP of Sales and Marketing at CROING, a women-funded and women-led creative agency. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome you to another edition of our newsletter and podcast, Women Who Network, stories of connections and success. As I always say, networking has played a key role in my career, and I have found through many conversations that it is an area that many women still don't feel confident in or need a little push to be encouraged to explore further. At CROING, we're motivated to inspire and empower professional women to feel more confident in networking. We believe that by sharing stories and experiences, we can encourage more women to connect and grow together. I'm super excited to introduce our special guest today, Angie. Thank you so much for joining us and for being part of this initiative. I'm confident that your story will motivate many women to embrace networking with more confidence. Please let us know more about you. Can you introduce yourself to our community?
Yes, hi, of course. Thank you so much for having me, Angie. Love that we share the same name. Makes this podcast or this conversation even better. A little bit about myself. So I was born in Peru. I immigrated to Florida when I was 9 and went to university, and then I ended up in sales at IBM in Chicago. From there, progressed throughout my career, and now I am cloud sourcing at NVIDIA. So that's a little bit about myself.
Thank you so much. So let's start with the questions. How has your approach to networking evolved throughout your career?
It has evolved in a way that before it was very transactional. I think at first I was really looking for advice or answers to questions that I felt like I wasn't getting, whether that was on Google or from different sources that I would read. And then over time, it's evolved into more of a friendship or relationship where it's mutually beneficial for both. And that's on one set of how I reflect networking evolving for myself. But then on the other hand, before I would always seek for mentorship or kind of network that would benefit me. But now I see it more so, how can I also empower others through my knowledge, and how can I put myself in a way that I network so that it can help others as well?
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Actually, that specific part of helping more people is something that I've evolved towards as well. That's why we're doing this initiative. Thank you so much for letting us know that that's part of your journey too. What strategies do you use to establish genuine and meaningful connections in networking, maybe specific to events or not, just in networking in general?
A piece of advice, I think now that we've evolved to a lot of virtual events, I definitely think that it's worth kind of putting yourself out there on just any type of virtual session that's either focused on your industry or focused on a specific like academic like focus, and leverage those to just kind of ask questions, right? Like it's like low risk rather than to be in person, right? Like you're just like talking to your computer, you are more comfortable in that sense. And I think other than that, to form relationships with folks in person, obviously if you kind of study humans, right? Like folks love to talk about themselves, and also folks love to be heard. And so if you're kind of aware and cognizant of like treat others how you want to be treated and kind of invoke those types of soft skills, essentially, it feels like you're networking in a more genuine way. And also listen to yourself if you're also, my social battery ran out. Like taking a pause so that you're not, really forcing those networking conversations that just ultimately may, do more worse than good.
The social battery part is so amazing because it's so true. Where we need to be aware of ourselves, either like the day of the specific event, if it's an event, for example, or the meeting, or throughout these events. For example, I went to Cannes with CROING in June, and it's a week event, and it's like from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. at night. So obviously in the middle, we needed to, catch our breath and stop for a while. But I took that into consideration, what you're saying, the social battery thing, because obviously you want to do your best, but if you're not well enough at a specific moment, you need to recognize it and be able to, take a pause, rest, or, gather yourself in order to move forward. So that's really, really cool and important important. Thank you so much for sharing it, Angie. By any chance, are you part of communities around where you're based?
I am. So I am part of the board for Latinas in Tech in the Chicago chapter. And part of what I do on the board of that chapter is I form events so that folks can network amongst each other and we can create more of a community amongst Latinas who are in tech, but also ensure that we develop professionally. We bring in speakers from different walks of lives and also we do workshops. I know you've done a workshop for us in the past on branding and that was super successful and we're looking to do more. So actually something that we did was a one-pager where we prepared women who were going to the Latinas in Tech conference. So we have a conference every year. And this one-pager was like, how do you, like the HEFA guide to a conference, right? Like, how do you prepare? And so it touched on like, do your research first, right? Like, who do you want to target within the different companies are going to be within the conference, right? So you're being intentional. Then while you're there, reach out, make sure that you introduce yourself, make sure you have your resume, your pitch ready. After the conference, like do the follow-ups. And so part of networking and like the beauty of getting to know folks is also the intentionality that comes with it, because that way you make more intentional relationships rather than talk to everyone and anyone. And then all of a sudden at the end of the conference or at the end of whatever networking event, you feel like, oh, I missed out talking to this person and this person. But also I was tired and my social battery was low, like at that point, you may want to just kind of sit back and reflect on like, okay, how should I have done it differently?
Yes, that's amazing. And I'm so happy to be part of Latinas in Tech. I actually was on 2 of your events. I spoke about branding on one and about building a network on the other. So thank you so much for having me. I think it's an amazing community and I've been able to meet the organizers, but also the community after the talks. And it's been like amazing. And they were part of the motivating factor for me to start with this initiative, because after the talks, the questions were like, how do I begin? I mean, they were motivated, but they felt like they didn't have enough tools. So I think with this and with the stories of connection of different women that are more accustomed to network and to networking events or, build a network, they can have these new tools. And can you share a pivotal moment in your career where networking played a key role?
Yes, absolutely. So there's been various networking moments that have been pretty pivotal, but I would say, for example, my previous job, we had obviously like different peers. Like I had a manager, my manager had their equal, right? Their peer. And sometimes because it was so virtual, it was hard to kind of get to know each other, like network amongst like within the organization. And so I decided to take, a leap of faith and just set one-on-ones with different folks and just like, hey, getting to know you, want to know more about how you got there. And through that outreach, I got to meet great folks. And eventually I met someone who developed into like a mentor. This person ended up leaving the company, went to a different company, and then recruited me to come over. And now I work where they're working. And so that's the power of networking, and not necessarily, right, like face to face, but that's like the power of just kind of putting yourself out there and just asking questions in a virtual way. So I think anyone and everyone can do it.
That's a great story. Thank you so much for sharing it. I think that the majority of the interviews have been about networking in different events or outside of the company you're already working on. But there have been a couple mentioning the importance of networking within your organization. I think that's really, really key. And it's awesome that you can understand like your goals. Maybe if you want to go a step further on your career or maybe change courses. Like, for example, part of our women that we've interviewed that said, I started in finance, but I wanted to change to marketing within the same organization. So I started networking, for them to notice me and for them to understand my goals. So I think it's really important for everyone to be able to network within the company that they're on and to have an understanding of their own goals in order to make them be heard, move forward with them in their career journey. I think it's really cool. Do you have an unexpected opportunity that came from networking or a connection that you made?
Let me think. An unexpected opportunity. Maybe an unexpected opportunity came about. So my partner is part of like a Chicago like caucus, Latino caucus foundation. And he brought me to one of their meets. And so, definitely I don't know anyone in this group. Like they all are part of a cohort. They know of each other. But I, step out of my comfort zone and introduce myself to different folks, right? Like I told a little bit about myself, like I'm part of Latinas in tech, the tech ecosystem. I'm in tech myself, right? This is what I do. And then fast forward, one of the women that was in that meet essentially reached out to my boyfriend and said like, hey, we're looking for Latinas or Latinos who are in tech that can be part of the Illinois governor's task force to help him understand how to implement AI around Illinois. And we want more like Latino representation. We need like a presence. And I want to nominate someone. And then like kind of like I remember your girlfriend was in it. And so fast forward to today, I applied. She kind of like put a word in for me. And now I'm part of the task force of like the Illinois AI and natural language processing. It's really cool out of nowhere, but I think that came about from just like introducing myself and just sharing like a little bit about what I can offer.
That's so cool. And I'm so curious, how did you start on Latinas in Tech? How did that happen?
So that one was pretty intentional. So one thing that I think I recognize is like, I really put myself out there because that's just the way that I think like, I take a step back, right? And I reflect and I think like, okay, what is it that I want to do? And a big part of it for me is like, I want to create a brand that I am like a tech leader, right? Like not just necessarily in my company, but outside too. And I also want to be impactful. And what I care a lot about is like the Latino community, right? And so I saw that Latinas in Tech existed, I think back in 2019. And I started to kind of reach out and just kind of really bombarded with messages on like the past board. And I think eventually they realized that there's like more demand. And so they decided to expand their board. And then that's when I immediately like applied because I was coming at them with like, can I help with anything? Like, I'm more than happy to like put more events on. So more than anything, right? Like instead of asking them like, hey, why aren't there more events? Or why isn't this done? Like saying more like, I can do it for you if you want me to. Like, I'm willing to take in the work. I'm willing to take in the ownership and responsibility. And I think it translated to now me obviously being on the board and really like pushing for these events, right? Like in collaboration with great folks like you.
Thank you so much for that. I think it is amazing what you just said about building your brand. When I first gave the personal branding talk for Latinas in Tech, something that I pointed out as really important is that even if you have the job of your dreams right now, and even if you have a lot of opportunities going on, it is really important to develop a personal brand. And it's pretty cool that you have an understanding of how do you want to be remembered. It's amazing because I know that lets you go after the opportunities that will make you achieve this goal, right? And that are making you achieve it because you have an amazing career. So thank you so much, because I think that sometimes we understand networking as something we do when we're out of a job. And it's not the case. It's something that we do for our personal brand to get our goals outside from a specific job and, to get ourselves out there. So thank you so much for that. And last but not least, what advice would you give to women who are just starting their professional careers or are hesitant to engage in networking?
I would say try to be as truthful as you can to yourself and how you feel. And I think that expands from like reflecting, right? Like taking a step back and thinking, what is it that I'm looking for? What is it that I want? What's my goal here? And then also to the extent of, okay, you're actively networking, you're doing it. And then, okay, did you like the conversation? Do you feel like the conversation should have gone differently? That is also as valuable as obviously networking with a bunch of folks, because then you just like improve your networking ability to become more confident, right? Like you practice your pitch even more. And you also like call out conversations that you want to pick a little bit more into, and then some that you don't. So I think I would just kind of double down on intentionality and reflection.
Thank you so much to all of you listening and reading. That was Angie and Angie.
Angie and Angie out.
Thank you so much for sharing your incredible insights with us. It's really inspiring to hear how networking has shaped your journey. To all of you listening, reading, or watching, remember your network is your net worth. Stay tuned for more inspiring stories in our next edition of Women Who Network, Stories of Connection and Success. And if you want to be part or propose someone for this space, please email me to Angie@CROING.com. Until next time, keep networking and growing. Bye.